get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. My name is Dr. Noah DeKoyer and I am your co-host. Today our guest is Vincent Virga. Vincent is the president of PFS Wealth Management Group, a New Jersey-based independent wealth management firm. Vincent has over 25 years experience in guiding individuals and institutions in all areas of the financial services industry, growing and developing close relationships with some of the finest minds in all areas of leadership, financial management, financial planning, tax reduction planning, and market alternative investment concepts. Having been mentored by these individuals and working with them in areas of growth, leadership, wealth management, and asset protection strategies, Vincent has been better able to serve his clients' needs in an ever-changing world that demands unconventional approaches to building long-term clarity in life and financial security. In addition, Vincent lectures extensively in the area of non-conventional approaches to wealth accumulation and preservation in other financial advisory professionals, as well as the general public through his highly energetic and entertaining educational workshops and seminars. Vincent is a lifelong resident of New Jersey and has been married to his high school sweetheart Camille for over 23 years. They have 2 children and enjoy traveling as much as possible. In addition, Vincent has served as the president of the Bayonne Chamber of Commerce, vice president of the Rotary Club, the trustee of the Bayonne Board of Education. He has also served on the boards of the Hudson County Chamber of Commerce, producer advisory board of asset marketing systems, as well as the Bayonne Jewish Community Center. Hello, Vincent. That's a mouthful.
Well, good morning. How are you, Noah?
I'm excellent. Vincent, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
I am born and raised in this wonderful state of New Jersey. Grew up first generation here, middle child of 2 parents that immigrated here from Sicily over 53 years ago, and now raising my own family in the wonderful town that I grew up in.
Excellent, excellent. Now, I know you just published a book, and the title is The Smart Approach, SMART Approach, a 5-step process to life, leadership, and investing. Why did you write this book?
Interesting. One word, fear. What I've learned over the course of my life, lecturing and being a student of some incredible leaders out there, such as John C. Maxwell, as well as Anthony Robbins, what I've learned is that fear has a way of controlling our lives as well as the future and legacy that we want to leave behind. And it really was, believe it or not, initially out of fear that I said, gosh, I found every possible excuse on this earth to not write this book. And really, when I focused on putting my energy towards the positives rather than the fear, all of a sudden the process became so simple. And really, that's ultimately what in essence, the book we hopefully will cover, acknowledges fear. But rather than allowing fear to dictate our lives and the legacies we leave behind, we focus more on the destination and the future of where we want to be.
That sounds fantastic. When I think of SMART, I think of specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. The SMART you wrote about, or the mnemonic you used, is quite a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, slightly. So our SMART approach, the 5-step process to life, leadership, and investing, we focus on S being simplicity. I believe that for us, in order to thrive, in order to live a life of fulfillment, and in order to be successful, simplicity has to be an integral part of our lives. I love a quote, or a popular quote, at least in my book of quotes, by Confucius. And Confucius actually says, life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. And that seems to be, for the most part, how most of us live our lives. We try to make such simplistic things more complicated than they are. So S is simplicity. M is measurability. Measurability is being able to track where we're going. In essence, it's like driving on a road to a destination without having a roadmap or a GPS. It's, in essence, flying blindly. There's another fantastic quote, and I think it's apropos considering the passing of Yogi Berra. Any road, and Yogi Berra said, any road will get you somewhere. What we need is to have measurable and trackable process. A is accountability, especially when it comes to managing your wealth. And really sticking it out during uncertain times is absolutely vital to success. And what we also, I mentioned fear, but another component is fear and greed, really dictating and impacting our future and our lives. I use an analogy of technology. When we look back 30 years ago at technology and even the medical industry, if you had to go for a heart surgery and you're interviewing a physician says, hey, don't worry, we've been doing this process for the last 30 years. Matter of fact, we use the same equipment as we did 30 years. I don't believe many of your listeners would actually consider working with that doctor. So we really have to have accountability of where we've been and where we're going, and it's important that we hold each other accountable. Options. R is really realistic results. We have a process at our firm. We don't take on any client, especially a client that has unrealistic goals, because my belief is that I'm not going to take on you as a client if your goals are unrealistic and just watch you fail. Too often there's advisors and others out there, and no matter what industry it is, that tell individuals what they want to hear rather than what they need to know. We don't work that way. For me, I'd rather underpromise and overperform. And then finally, T is teamwork. Ultimately, my belief is a team is formed and grown through daily activity. Solid and dependable team can't really be formed by just one person who likes the idea of teamwork. And really, and this is something that I've learned also through another one of my coaches is Darren Hardy in his book, The Compound Effect. And really what he says is we have to take small, steady, consistent steps as a team, as a unit, and ultimately over time it will lead to far greater success. So really there's the five-step approach: simplicity, measurability, accountability, realistic results, and teamwork.
Is the book set up in chapters that specifically dive deep into each one of these topics?
Yeah, so we have, as part of our wealth management business and our view of diversification, based on and it's premised on the endowment model. It's a book that I was fortunate to stumble upon during the last largest market correction we experienced in 2008. A book by David Swenson. He's the chief portfolio manager for the Yale Endowment. And it was really then that David Swenson taught me and really showed me what true asset class diversification is. And we've built it here at PFS. We've built it into what we call the simplified endowment model. It's a three-tiered step process, and it's 3 steps of the 5-step process. And what we've done is the simplicity, the measurability, the accountability, the realistic results, as well as teamwork. What we do is that we've incorporated it twofold, not only in life, not only in leadership, and I say leadership from a self-leadership standpoint, but we've instilled these belief systems also in the way my clients and prospective clients have to look at their investments, especially in this day and age of uncertainty and volatility in the universe. What I educate my clients on is that we all know that history does what? It repeats itself. And when we know history repeats itself, we should make sure that we're better prepared for when the inevitable occurs. So, yeah, I would say that our model, the 3-tiered system, is embedded inside of the 5-step process and within the book. So the book is very simple to read. And I did it specifically. I'm a bottom line type of advisor and an individual. I'm a results oriented, and my clients appreciate that approach for me. And you'll see that the book is simple to read and to the point, and it's exactly the way I like to read. Yeah.
When we look at life, leadership, and investing, do any one of those topics really excite you more than the other, or do you really think that each one of those components have to be looked at intricately and how they work together?
No, I think, honestly, I think they have to work together because, my specialty and what I have a true passion is to help individuals in providing clarity and certainty into their lives and end the legacies that they leave behind. And as I said, from a wealth management standpoint, too often we have brokers and advisors out there that promise the world to these individuals. And overnight and in the blink of an eye, we see that their legacies and their life savings has the potential to disappear. Today, I spoke with a young lady that came on board as a client, and working with a broker who really did not and was unable to instill some levels of measurability. I kind of look at it like being a coach or a trainer. For all of us that have started any New Year's resolution or any exercise program, we know that out of the gate, and traditionally the first 21 days is when a habit is built. And that's kind of what I believe. So I believe that when I sit down with my clients, I instill a belief system of abundance. I remove for them the belief system of, or what I kind of call the limiting belief system. It's okay. And I had this conversation with someone just the other day. It's funny that sometimes we find it admirable to say we just want to get by. It was a couple yesterday, a recent retiree. The wife actually said to me, she said, well, I just want to make sure that we get by. And I'm like, my gosh, there's nothing admirable about that. So for me, the financial planning and the clarity as what we're going to do and how we're going to help our clients in their fiscal life is intertwined with the life and leadership component. I want them to believe that tomorrow is going to be a better day. And it starts right out of the gate of changing and reformatting their mindset and their belief system.
That sounds like a lot of work that Tony Robbins does. Is this what you gathered studying and working with Tony Robbins?
Yes. So, I'm a student of Tony Robbins, and interestingly enough, he recently wrote a book on the financial universe, and a lot of what I share and I discuss is intertwined and similar to what Tony kind of reinforces in his book. But back to fear, back to the word fear. And for any of your listeners that have gone through one of Tony's events, he's famous for his fire walk. And once again, the limiting belief, and these individuals, it exists in all of us. Oh, you can't do that. You're going to burn your feet. It's impossible. No way. Every possible reason is always thrown at. And I tell you, I lived it, and now I use it as a metaphor. I did the fire walk, 15-foot walk over 1,200-degree red-hot coals. And it starts with a belief system that we're not going to let fear dictate our future, right? So it's okay to acknowledge it. And this is what I kind of show and teach my clients, is that it's okay to acknowledge fear. For me, every morning I wake up, there's, even when I want to go to the gym, there's always what I kind of call the liar inside of me that gives me every darn possible excuse why I shouldn't go. And some of the most creative and innovative rationalizations you can think of. Oh my gosh. And I start laughing at it. And literally what I do now is I acknowledge it. And I think anytime any of your listeners, and I instill this in my clients as well, anytime there is a goal or an objective or a dream that one of your listeners may have, it's okay to have that fear come in. It's okay to acknowledge that fear. But what you do is acknowledge it, let it know that it's there, let it know that it's there, but then immediately and instinctively just look at the destination. It's kind of what I call the why. Your why to want to have to do something has to be specific, definitive, and strong. Back to the finances, right? Sometimes clients will come in and say, well, this is what I have and I'd like more money. Well, I put $1 on the table and I said, here you go, you've got more money, all right? It's exactly what they wanted. Their goals, their wishes, and their dreams are not specific enough. They're not clear enough. And that's what lacks, is the fear. The fear kind of impacts the ability to have clarity. So what I say is acknowledge fear. It's okay, but don't let it dictate your life and the legacy you want to leave behind. Always, the minute that fear comes in, think down the road of where you want to be. And that's exactly back to the firewalk. I never looked down at the red hot coals. What I did was, and for any of your listeners that have participated, they know what I mean, is you get yourself into a state, you have to get yourself into a belief system. And literally, rather than looking down at the coals, you look at the end, at the finish line. And there's just a ton of people waiting for you to complete that walk, waiting to give you a hug and congratulate you. And there's nothing more thrilling and more exciting than that. And that's exactly the way life should be.
Totally agree. Now, I did a firewalk many years ago, and when everybody was working towards the firewalk and working towards their belief system that they could do it, I thought that was a bunch of baloney.
Yes.
And I just kind of sat there. And I did the firewalk, and I was one of the first people that went across. But I'll tell you what, Vincent, I burned the hell out of my feet.
Well, you may, well, I don't know. You may have flat feet, so that if you've got flat feet, that may be a problem. But I can tell you there is, and you have to be that little ember that may get in between your toes and stuff. Fortunately for me, not even a blister, but once again, even the pain that you endured for that brief moment, I'm certain did not even compare to the exhilaration that you experienced post that walk.
I was thrilled that I did it. I was thrilled that my wife did it as well. But going back, I think that because I didn't take the pre-work seriously, the mindset seriously, it really affected my outcomes in terms of getting burned.
Yeah, and that's right. As you know, I mean, there is a process leading up to that walk. You just don't get up, go outside, and do the walk. Really, and this is one of the brilliant things that Tony does, is he teaches you how to instill a mantra, a belief system, a ritual to get you into the mindset. And really now, and I'm certain it's with you, but it's even with me, we lived it. We actually did it. Now I use it metaphorically. I mean, every morning I wake up before I go to the gym. I've got my own little ritual that I'll do before I walk into the office. I go through my little ritual, and it's I kind of go through my blessings and my gratitude for being on this earth another day. And it's the same thing. I do a firewalk for every aspect of my life, and it's 4 components. It's called what I call my 4 B's: body, belief, your bonds, and your business. So I literally do, not to say literally, but I metaphorically do a firewalk for each aspect of my life. And I try to instill that in a very simplified manner for my clients here at our at PFS Wealth Management Group.
I think that's a great way to look at things in life. I really do. Now, when we look at simplicity, measurability, accountability, realistic actions, and team, are there any other stories or examples that really stick out in your mind that you'd like to bring up?
Well, here, going back to Darren Hardy, which I think is another mentor, and his book, The Compound Effect, really showed me and taught me something. And I can tell you, I think there's a great story, one of many stories I like. A middle-aged woman who thought and wished she can run a half marathon. And really, the question then was that Darren asked the lady was, why? Why do you want to run? And that's the key. I would say that it's important, back to the why. Your listeners' why has to be strong enough and specific and definitive enough. And the lady's why was very simplistic. I want to be able to be healthy so I can walk my daughter down the aisle when she gets married and be able to enjoy my future grandchildren. So now that we knew, and he knew the clarity of what this woman's why was, he started her on a process. Slow and steady, consistent action will lead to long-term success. And basically, long story short, started walking around the block, then walking around 3 blocks, then walking around 10 blocks, then jogging it. Long story short, within 9 months, this woman was able to run a half marathon, and within a year, she was able to run a full marathon. But here is what the compound effect was. First, we knew what her why was, and it was strong and clear. It wasn't that she wanted to be an Ironman participant in less than 4 months, because that was unrealistic. But the bottom line is, when the clarity of her why was brought to light, then the course of action was apparent. But here is the compound effect it had on this woman. In order for her to achieve these new goals that she had, this why, she now had to be associating herself with people that were following the same belief system. So rather than going out drinking at the local bar and eating fried food every night, she had to surround herself with individuals and friends that were eating and drinking healthier. Now that she felt better about herself, and now that she felt more confident about herself, naturally her production at her work improved, and it improved and also improved her bottom line. Her relationship with her husband naturally improved because she felt better about herself. So you see, that's how the compound effect works, is that when you have a strong enough why and you set on a course, there's going to be the compound effect of how it ripples in other aspects of your life. So I would say that that's another kind of story or analogy that I'd like to share with your listeners.
Yeah, your why or your personal why is so important. And let me give you an example in my office. Vincent, you know I'm a chiropractor, and
Yep.
when I see a new patient come in and we discuss and we take his x-rays and do the scans and we look at their spine and we go over their health charts and we figure out how we're going to help them, I always find out what their why is for being in the office, because once I find that out, I can look them right in the eye and tell them that we're going to get you out of pain, we're going to get you functioning better, we're going to get you healthier. But one of my new patients this week was he wanted to get back to boxing, and I looked right at him and said, "We're going to get you boxing again." And
Yep.
that just changes that changes everything when they know that you are on their team to get them to where and what they want to do or accomplish.
Yeah, and that's it, and that's exactly the case, and it has to be specific, it has to be clear, and it has to be definitive. It can't be vague, right? And that's the case. And once again, even with the client the prospective client who became a client this morning, she had some real unrealistic goals, and I hate and as a financial advisor, you hate to tell people that they have to make some drastic changes to their lives in order to make sure that they're able to sustain a standard of living and not run out of money while they're on this earth. And it's difficult. But once again, when you're able to give that hard lesson, and when you're able to understand what their goals are and understand that they have to make some short-term sacrifices for long-term goals, then yeah, so it becomes a little bit more real and a little bit more vivid. And that was the key with her, is that what I instilled in her was a belief system that things will be better if as long as she changes her mindset, right? As long as she believes and she starts thinking and knowing what her why is. And then what we can do is we can do our part in managing and overseeing her finances and keeping her accountable, right? It goes back to accountable. We have to hold our clients and they hold us accountable. And that's why it's important that right out of the gate, one of the things I always say is I'll never, ever, ever tell my clients what they want to hear. I'll tell them what they need to know. And that's what I think they've always come to appreciate of me and my firm and my team of advisors.
Now, how would you recommend a person begin the process of your SMART approach?
Well, the SMART approach, and once again, it is all dependent on what aspect of their lives they're looking to improve on. I would say that when it comes to specifically finances and their investing world, there has to be a clear understanding of what their goals and objectives are, and when they want to reach those goals. Then it goes back to the measurability, right? We have to be able to know where we are in order to know where we're going, and it has to be specific. So I would say that they first have to make sure that they know where they want to go and that it's realistic, right? Then what has to happen is, because risk comes into play, and what has to happen is that we have to make sure that any strategy that they have implemented or any strategy that we are implementing for them is at a level of risk that is appropriate for that particular individual. Case in point, Noah, is I can't tell you how often, over 95% of the time when I sit down with prospective clients, I have them do, and I have some redundancies, but I have them take a questionnaire. It's a financial questionnaire, and I kind of call it more of a psychological questionnaire. And the reality is, what I want to gauge from them is what their willingness for loss versus potential gain is over the course of the next 6 months. And we allocate a score. It's basically almost really neat. It looks like a speed limit sign. And then what I do, and I provide for them, and my office provides complimentary at no cost, is a fee and risk analysis of their current portfolio. And what we've come to find over 90% of the time is that the risk that the individual is willing to take is always off kilter to the amount of risk that their portfolio is actually accepting. And all along, they think that their portfolio is built based on their risk tolerance. Then when you add the components of fees and expenses associated with certain types of investments, you add that into the equation, then it becomes even a greater number. So what we first do is we have to make sure we determine what your risk score is. In essence, what we want to take out, and going through this process, and prior to us building a proper plan and strategy for them, is in essence what it's doing is removing fear and greed out of the equation, because fear and greed is the number one killer of financial plans and individuals' life savings.
I agree. Now, our audience really likes takeaways, some actionable items, without getting into very specific details, because I know you're a wealth advisor and a financial advisor, with some wealth strategies or thoughts or ideas that our audience can start thinking about to help them get their finances on track or to grow their wealth and their abundance.
Yep, I'll share some things that they have to think about. Obviously, each individual's goals, wishes, and dreams are going to be unique to each individual. But what I would say, absolutely, a couple of takeaways and a couple of things really that your listeners need to understand is, first and foremost, know who your advisor is. You're giving your life savings and entrusting a broker or an advisor with your life savings. Make sure that that advisor has a reputable reputation. You want to make sure that there are no blemishes on their record, okay? So you want to make sure that you're dealing with a reputable advisor that doesn't have any, as I put them, any hiccups on their record. Number two is, don't be afraid to ask the questions. Quite often, brokers and advisors love kind of pounding their chest like Superman and telling you how well they do in good years. With all due respect, my daughter Rachel, at 13, in her class has picked some wonderful stocks because the market has done well. It's important to challenge that advisor or that broker and say, you know what, you tell me how well you did this quarter, but how well or how poor did your portfolio do in the last market correction of 2008? That's important. And, more often than not, they'll say, well, hey, we lost money, but so did everyone else. And I would argue not necessarily so. Okay, so don't be afraid to ask the poignant, direct questions. And I'll tell you, you've got to go with your gut feeling. If you don't feel confident about some recommendations an advisor or a broker's making, it's okay to say no. Have a clear understanding of why your advisor is picking an investment or picking a strategy, right? And it has to be in line with your goals, wishes, and dreams. So I would say those three, those three would be the key points to really keep in mind when working with a financial advisor, and then also understand the fees associated with them. Don't be afraid to ask what the fees are. Not only the advisor's fees, but the fees associated with particular investments.
I can't agree more, and those are exactly the types of things that our audience needs to hear. Takeaways that they can put into action and think about, are questions to have when they're looking for a financial advisor, because that's so crucial. I'm in the belief that people can't or really shouldn't do it on their own, and help is and particularly in the financial realm, is really important.
Yep, I agree.
Vincent, we truly appreciate your time today. How can we get in touch with you or your book?
Well, you can reach us here in wonderful Bayonne, New Jersey. Toll free, you can reach us at 201-339-7300. Or I would also offer for your listeners, if they contact us through our website, www.pfs, that's Paul Frank Sam, wealthgroup.com. It'll be my pleasure to provide them with that complimentary fee and risk analysis. Also, the book, if your listeners are interested, is available on Amazon and Kindle currently.
Excellent. Beautiful. My name is Dr. Noah DeKoyer, your co-host, and thank you for listening to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. If you like what you heard today, please share this with your friends and family and encourage them to subscribe on iTunes. Thank you, and as my oldest son says, be awesome and never unawesome.